Warlocks, sorcerers, adepts, friends, fans, family, and followers to Season 5, Episode 9 of the hit underground occult radio show known as Knights of the Nephilim, brought to you by Celestial Oddities Radio and the Coterie of Semil Arcane Occult Order. As always, I will be your host and guide on this journey into magic and mysticism, darkness, and divination. I am Frater Crow, and it's a pleasure to have you listening in this evening. Whether you're listening live, streaming after the fact, or you've downloaded us to your device for on the go, we do want to thank you for your patronage and support. Just make sure you click the like, share, follow, and subscribe buttons on whatever platform you're moving or tuning in from. Helps move us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives. Not only of this show here, Knights of the Nephilim, based upon esoteric and occult doctrine, ritual magic, and theology, but some of our other shows as well. Palm, Pair of Normal Guys, deep diving into paranormal and supernatural phenomena, bringing on guests and taking on phone calls from folks like you from around the world to hear your extraordinary stories of the unexplained. We have Caniculum Obscuritatis, where it's a show talking about building a practice from the ground up with ritual and ceremonial magic. We also have other shows, Last Call, unfiltered, unrelenting, and unapologetic life stories. That's pretty intense. And then we have Uncovering the Underground, where we interview and talk with artists from all over the world, from music to models to comedians and entertainers. We have something for absolutely everyone here at Celestial Oddities Radio. So make sure you check out the different shows. But by clicking those buttons, it really helps us out. If you are someone who likes tuning in live, we do air these shows on the Thursday nights that we do present, and they are from 9 to 10:30 or 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time across a few different places. That is going to be the Frater Crow Facebook page, Knights of the Nephilim Facebook page, Celestial Oddities Radio Facebook page, and the Coterie of Semil Facebook page. They will be on there for 30 days until Facebook removes them, unfortunately, with their new policies. But it'll also be on the Knights of the Nephilim Frater Crow YouTube page permanently, live as well, and after the fact for streaming. After we air our episodes, we do upload those episodes to a multitude of different channels: Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, Deezer, Castbox, Google, Amazon, Apple, you name it, we're on it. Some people don't care for the visual or the live. They just want to listen to it at the gym, on the drive to work, whatever have you, and that is fine. So you can find us absolutely everywhere. If you leave comments on the after the fact, the audio versions, I will do my best to answer, but I don't see those as easily. The live versions, we do see them. We throw your questions, your responses, your comments up on the screen. We read them off. We want you to be a part of the show. This is as much of your show as it is ours. So please feel free to tune in where you like, but leave comments, be a part of the show, and engage. If you caught our last 8 episodes, it's been a wonderful season so far. Truly humbled and thankful to have all the amazing guests that we have on. And I'm sure you guys have felt the same. I know there's been just an outpouring of comments of people just really pleased with what we presented for you this season. And we still have a lot to go. So thank you so much for that support. There are those who study the occult as metaphor, and those who live it as geometry. Tonight, we speak with one who has turned both into a science, from the Pythagorean Order of Death to the Atlantean Senate, from ethics encoded in mathematics to the Tree of Death itself. Jonathan Barlow Gee has spent decades constructing a unified field of the mystical and measurable. This is not theory, it is architecture. Not philosophy, it is initiation. So join us as we enter into the vault and witness the resurrection of knowledge. Step into the circle as we welcome Jonathan Barlow Gee. Good evening, brother.
Good evening.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So for those that might not be aware of you, and I have to say it right off the bat, guys, Jonathan is unfortunately not near as known as he should be. He is certainly known, but not by enough people. We hope to change that tonight. So if you were watching the show, you love his work, make sure you pick up his books. Make sure you check out his YouTube videos, his channels, his lectures. You're going to see why here in a few moments. But, certainly I feel you are underrated, brother. You're just not getting as much shine as you should. So kudos to you for what you do, despite the fact that the internet has become a hard place to really get your word out there, because there's just so much of everything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first question I had for you this evening is we're going to jump into some of your texts. And in ATS and in IL 101, you describe reality as a recursive mathematical field. Do you see consciousness as a byproduct of geometry or geometry as a byproduct of consciousness?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think geometry pre-existed consciousness, but consciousness arose to study geometry and discovered it for itself. So, yeah, like consciousness grows onto geometry in the same way a vine grows on a lattice, say, being and they study. Are we back?
I think we lost you a little bit. I think you might be back. There you are. Yeah, there you are. Okay, yeah, we lost you there for a minute. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just think that consciousness grows onto geometry like a vine on a lattice, but the geometry pre-existed consciousness. I think consciousness can travel back to before the beginning of the existence of geometry, but I don't think that that means that consciousness itself pre-existed geometry. So the mind can explore the realm of time before we began measuring time as a physical force, when it was just a force of motion and energy before the Big Bang. But if one places one's mind into that position, it doesn't, for example, overthrow or usurp or overturn the concept of a universal creator God to stand in that position and say, this is what the situation was, this is what the conditions were like, this is the substance of what nature was like at the time.
No, I think that's very powerful. And actually, that jumps in with the second question here is that, the number sequence, the cube, the torus appear, repeatedly across your works. How do these geometric archetypes mirror the structure of the divine mind, do you think?
That's another great question. If there is such a thing as a divine mind, its architecture and geometry is superior to our own in an unimaginable quantity and quality. We live in the universe. The universe is not made for us. We're like small animals living inside of an enormous aquarium. So if there's a divine mind, it may have designed the universe for its own functions without having us in mind, so to speak.
We're just kind of byproducts of the creation.
In a sense, I've certainly gone looking for the divine mind, but I can't say that I've definitively found anything to constitute evidence for it. And again, saying that one can place oneself into the position of being prior to the creation of the cosmos, the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe, that isn't the same thing as knowing the mind of God as the creator of the universe, or supplanting the role of God as the creator of the universe.
I would agree with that, because I've been able to, in my works, reach a state of, you could call it samadhi, you could call it whatever name you want, where it was just absolute bliss, nothingness, and allness at one time. And it's funny enough that we talked about geometry, because what I experienced was just endless geometric patterns and shapes and laser grids. But I wasn't able to reach beyond that. That in itself is a mind-bending experience and encounter. It will have, you know, unfolding effects in your life just to experience that. But obviously, there might be something beyond that. I've never been able to reach that. So, as you said, to see what's in the mind of the divine mind, if there is such a thing, is different than meeting and fully understanding the divine mind.
Indeed. And what's beyond that layer of light and refractions of light that the consciousness experiences as it approaches light speed, thinking at the speed of light. Beyond that is what's outside of even hyperspace, beyond the outside of our local universe. And to experience that, people lick frogs and 5DM, MEO DMT, and what Mike Tyson took that time. Those types of drugs allow their consciousness temporarily and put it even beyond that hyperspace level into what people describe as a realm of absolute darkness and void. And that's simply what's beyond hyperspace. That's the level of the event horizon to the next cosmos or the next universe up, where the mind is at that time. And it comes back from it, so it's a safe thing to experience.
But it's life-changing.
Psychologically.
Indeed, it's funny that you mentioned... And it's funny that you mention event horizon, obviously, because that's a term in itself. But I was just talking to someone the other day about the concept of the horror movie Event Horizon and how they do indeed flip into another dimension and they can't quite fully come back from that, and everything really changes. And that's one of my favorites of all time because I love the concept of the bending of the lateral plane and being able to poke through both sides and then reflatten back out. And you've time traveled, but not in the common sense of what people believe time travel is. And I know you've talked heavily on time travel before as well.
Yes.
Now, I want to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that there was a couple more questions in that specific section I want to jump into. The third question I had was, what role does zero play in your metaphysics? Because is nothingness an absence or the true face of God? Now, understand that we can say God as a being might not be there, but, you know, obviously there is the understanding that zero itself could be God, you know, which is pretty deep for those listening out there. But what is your thoughts on that? Is nothingness an absence or is it the true face of God?
I don't determine that there's necessarily a difference between absence and the true face of God, because of course if there's no such thing as God, then there would be no face of God. But that's only my own personal perspective, because ultimately I associate myself as an atheist, more of a scientist, materialist thinker in those regards than a theologian. I don't have that belief. But zero, aside from being the face of God or being a void in and of itself, is an indeterminate form in mathematics. It's what it means is that 0, 1, and the number infinity are considered indeterminate forms because they can't be quantified, and particularly quantified relative to one another. So if you take 1 and divide it by infinity, the result is 0, for example. If you take 0 and take it to the power of 0, the result is 1, for another example. So there's a lot of mathematical mysteries down at the level of between 0 and 1 that many people aren't aware of, and that are kind of mind-boggling when you think about the concepts being the difference existentially between void and creation, or void and matter, void and somethingness, void and existence. And infinity, of course, just takes both of those concepts to the utmost extension, whereby the circumference of a circle can be infinite, while the centroid of the circle is 0, and then any point on that circumference or within the area of that circle can be likened to 1.
That's pretty wild if you think about it. I mean, I'm thinking about it as you're talking about it. I'm like, yeah, it's not something you think about so much, the distance between 0 and 1. But if you start to look at it that way, it's like, okay, there's a lot of distance between 0 and 1.
Indeed. Millions and billions and infinite numbers of fractals and fractions and decimals, and the scariest ones are numbers like pi that continue on after the decimal place literally infinitely and never repeat themselves.
Yeah, it's wild. I've looked into pi before and how it just is endless. That's mathematics is something that I think for a lot of people is scary because of the fact that it's so intellectual to try to grasp those deeper truths that it just kind of pushes people off from it. But if you start to study it, the conclusions you can come to or hypothesize on is just like the numbers, is endless, and it's beautiful.
Indeed, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I wish people would be more excited to study it, because the things that you can find out about from doing so are exceptional.
I think everything comes down to mathematics at the end of the day. I mean, everything, as we talked about, is geometry and mathematics. I mean, it's really everything. It's shapes and numbers. Now we got some comments here. That's fascinating, actually. Sarah said, I've seen geometric shapes a lot lately during my Hecate meditation. Some I recognize, some I do not. Still don't know what to make of it. I would say don't worry about it just too much yet. Let it unfold for you, because as you travel further in, you'll travel further in. These shapes will start to give you intelligences. That's what I've experienced in some of my work as I've come into contact with different I call them laser grids, because the way I've seen them are lasers. And I've gotten downloads afterwards. I don't know how to explain that. So whether there is a divine mind or not, I will tell you that there's a lot of code hidden in those laser grids or those geometric patterns, and you can absorb some of them by coming into contact with them, Sarah. Now, Jonathan, you speak of Ein Sof, and Ein Sof are. How can modern physics approximate this mystical trinity of the void? I mean, what ways do you see it translating over into study?
In modern physics, modern astrophysics in particular, it's a simple coordination or correspondence between Ein and Ein Sof and Ein Sof or. If one takes Ein Sof or as meaning vast, limitless light or limitless empty light, and Ein Sof is meaning limitless emptiness, and Ein is meaning emptiness or nothingness, then these can be seen as emanations outward from the surface of the universe. So if we were to see the exterior surface of the universe, it would have an illumination emanating from it that would extend further out into a darkness beyond and around it. The illumination from the universe itself would be Ein Sof or, and the darkness around it would be Ein. So in many cosmologies, these have been reversed. Kabbalistic cosmologies in which Ein is at the bottom, Ein Sof is in the middle, and then Ein Sof or is at the top. But in my own studies of astrophysics and theoretical cosmology, etc., it seems more likely that the correct order would be to place them as emanating outward from the highest level of the known and knowable universe, in the same way that light emanates out from a light bulb. If you hang a light bulb or a candle, it emanates out from a candle in a dark room. That's essentially the same as how hyperspace surrounds the local universe. The hyperspace emanation, the light of tachyons, surrounds the local universe at its core, like light surrounding a light bulb or a candle. But then the darkness that surrounds all that beyond that as well is the interior surface of the event horizon of the black hole inside the larger parent cosmos.
We got a comment here, the JBG.
Yeah.
No, that's
Hey,
fascinating.
Anders, I know that guy.
That's fascinating to think about it that way, because you've done a lot with the tree of life and the tree of death, or the Kabbalistic, or excuse me, the Sephirotic tree and the Qliphothic tree, with making changes to it that are sensible. I mean, I think that there are certainly errors, and I've seen even other people's studies on it that are quite intriguing, about some of the spheres being in places that necessarily are out of order. That if you were to shift, for example, if you shift, I'm trying to make sure I say this correctly, but it should be that, and there's reasons, because the reflectiveness as it comes down and descends, Gamaliel or Yesod is the second sphere, but there's a book I read that was talking about actually putting it where Tifereth is and raising Tifereth, and it actually made a very good point. It'd be too much to go into tonight, but it was talking about how even with a mirrored reflection that technically it should be higher. And it's intriguing, and that's what we were talking about earlier. It's intriguing to dig into these matters that we can just accept at face value. Okay, well, this is how the tree is, and that's what we know from it, and that's what the Kabbalists said. But you know what? The Kabbalists were constantly hypothesizing. They were constantly coming up with new understandings of things. And I feel like too much in modern occultism, we just accept old doctrine as doctrine. And we're like, that's it. There's no expansion off of here, when it should ever expand. We should constantly be expanding, rehypothesizing, digging deeper, changing, because the way things were thought of 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, are different now. Even when we look at ritual magic, the way that they understood working with spirits when they wrote the Megaton and when they wrote the Grand Grimoire is different than how we see the spirits and work with them today, or should be different, because they were different times with different cultures under different circumstances. And unfortunately, I think too many people stay stale in that old way of thinking.
Indeed, it's easy to become stuck in dogmatism. It's comforting. Like an afternoon nap. But one has to wake up eventually and get back in the game, get back in the swing of things. And in that regard, I would quote Crowley, however one wishes to pronounce his name. I have heard everybody else pronounces it Crowley, but I pronounce it Crowley.
Yeah, no, Aleister Crowley, yeah. And you do hear both kind of directions.
Yeah, there's a quote that I think comes from Robert Anton Wilson that says, they treat me foully who call me Crowley, those who know me call me Crowley. But I don't think he actually said that. I can't be sure, so I call him Crowley. But the quote from Crowley is, of course, the famous, our method is science and our aim is religion. Place no reliance in virgin or pigeon. But the method should always be science and should always be able to modify and update itself along the way. It should never allow itself to become stuck in dogma.
I think, and people oftentimes don't realize that, I mean, just because a lot of science doesn't recognize ritual, doesn't recognize a lot of spirituality and occultism, doesn't mean that it is not a science. It is just a misunderstood science. And we can I can't talk tonight. We can still continue to, change that, to dig deeper, like I said. And I think that is essential. So if you're listening out there, folks, don't just take what you're told. Don't just take what you read. The slogan that Natasha actually is on the screen right now, and myself do with the Coterie of Samil, or our cult, with what we do with everything we teach, our slogan is question everything, including us. Don't take my word as law. question me. That's fine. I want to be questioned, because if you're questioning, you're learning. And if you're learning, you're growing. And that is the whole point of all of this, is to grow and continue to better your life and your understanding. Now, Natasha did say, a lot of times when working with different entities, I see them as shapes rather than forms, especially when falling asleep. Always been interesting to me. Well, because I think behind the layer of what we understand as beings, a lot of it does come back to, as we talked about earlier, geometric patterns and number sequences. But as you what am I trying to say? As you de-evolve, and I don't mean that in a bad term, but you got to think, if we're looking at Ein so far, and we are looking as things move further and further down to Malkuth, they're added more and more layers of things that make it more and more humanistic. So we see them as a being, we hear them as a person. Sometimes there's smells, sometimes there's sounds that come with it. These are all earthly things that we used to understand it, but as we raise further and further up in our consciousness and understanding, there's less and less of that. So there doesn't even need to be talking. There doesn't even need to be sound or a visual. It's just telepathically coming to you. You don't even need to see anything, because you're coming into higher consciousness. So I think that's a normal thing, Natasha, to be experiencing, as I know you know. So that's awesome. Let's jump into the next. What do I got here for you? So we're going to shift gears here for a moment. I'm going to say, in your Pythagorean Order of Death manifesto, you outline an Atlantean democracy. What distinguishes this from utopianism or theocracy?
Or what was last?
Or theocracy.
Theocracy. Well, for one thing, I wouldn't consider theocracy utopian. But I would consider Atlantean democracy more utopian than a theocracy, personally, just because a theocracy is essentially monocratic or monarchical, where there's a singular ruler, a dictator almost, if one allows oneself to use that term, even if it's a popular dictator. If there's only one person or one force that's in power over everything else, as in the so-called kingdom of heaven, for example, I would be bored. I prefer down here in the more material realms, where there's room for diversity and experimentation and just changing things around. So in Atlantean democracy, there's more of an opportunity to be self-expressive than I think there would be under a theocratic or more theocratic utopia.
No, perfect. Now, you write of psychic conspiracy versus psychic revolution. Are these archetypal forces perpetually in balance, or can one truly overcome the other?
They do overcome each other almost entirely, back and forth, but only temporarily. So what it describes is twin timeline-like concepts or constructs, structures, running parallel to one another and to our own mainstream timeline. A better world line and a worse world line, a worse future and a better future. And these being accessible psychologically, psychically, one can determine where one is in that cycle of ups and downs, and then choose to become, for oneself, either more of a psychic revolutionary or a psychic conspirator, which is just going along with or against the currents of such a force as psychological better or worse parallel timelines. But a psychic revolutionary would be one who wants to bring about the psychic revolution and just wants to allow everyone to realize that they're already telepathic, and allow everyone to remember that we've always been telepathic, and to be able to accept the crime of hiding that and the sins of secrecy and lies that are necessary to protect that, and to forgive ourselves and one another for having committed all of that criminal activity for thousands of years under civilization, to pretend that we're just psychic slaves, mentally bound to our circumstances but unable to control them for ourselves, automatons and etc. So if we can wake up from that ourselves, and if other people can be awakened from that, that's the goal and the philosophy of the psychic revolutionary. Whereas the psychic conspirator still wants to maintain civilization such as it is without a psychic revolution. So the psychic conspirator is more conservative in that sense and wants to maintain the status quo. But they're also, because they're less revolutionary, they're less extremist in their viewpoint. And moderation isn't necessarily wrong. So the point of view of the psychic conspirator is simply that they should maintain the existent structure of the telepathic empires of the world, Catholicism, the United Nations, the United States, that are the world body, the world governing bodies. And these shouldn't be risked in exchange for the benefits, potential benefits of having everybody realize that they can read one another's minds, and that that they can more than that, even more than that, manifest reality.
And that's I think, and like you said, it's not even learning; it's just remembering. You know, it's the fact that we've caused ourselves to forget so much of ourselves, that it's all hiding right there. All we need but do is remember. But it's so hard to remember. And like you said, there's so many people that just want to. They don't want the choppy waters, so they like to keep balance. You know, let's just keep it the way that it is. Let's not change anything for what could be. Let's just stay where we are and see what happens. And unfortunately, you know, if you're not changing much, you're not changing much. So, you know, it would be beautiful to see a day where more and more and more people wake up to the fact that they have so much ability, so much at their fingertips, but they just don't know it. And in a way, I worry, you know, so I can see both viewpoints. I can see obviously wanting everyone to awaken and push for that, but I also can see that, just like everything, if too many people started realizing their powers, you're going to have a great bit of that use it for evil means, and then you're going to have the same type of struggle that you have now, just in a different form.
That's the argument that's made on both sides.
Yep. Now, if Atlantis represents a state of collective illumination, what does its fall represent in human psyche today? Is that where we're at now?
Oh, that's a great twist at the end of that too. It certainly seems, by all accounts, that we're in a similar place on the orbit and location of our planet relative to the constellations, that we have been an aeon ago, 2,000 years ago, and 2,000 years before that, etc. We're a part of a repeating cycle. We're a part of a repeating cycle that we've experienced before in history, in human history, and even before the beginning of writing and the beginning of recorded human history. We see events that we can see around us now today as well, and happening and unfolding around us even now. And some of these are space weather events, like alignments of the planets and the peak of the solar sunspot cycle, and the placement of Earth relative to the sun and galactic core. So that from the position of Earth, the sun has recently seemed to align with galactic core and all of their orbits around one another, etc. But at this particular point on this cycle that we've been in before, it seems likely to us right now that there's expected to be a cataclysm of some form to punish us in the same way that we've been punished in the past for becoming too technologically advanced, becoming too far evolved. But that's only the anthropomorphic theological way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it would be to say that we're just passing through a sunspot cycle and meteor showers that are left over from cometary debris in the past, and will likely encounter comets and solar flares and things like that in the future as well. But there are comparisons to be made between now and the end of the Younger Dryas period in terms of when people place the actual geological evidence for the mythological fall of Atlantis and the deluge, the Great Flood, that all world mythologies have record of. And they associate that with the end of the Younger Dryas and the end of the last Ice Age cycle, or the end of the last North Hemisphere Ice Age period, about 12,500 years to 14,500 years ago. But yeah, Atlantis as a state of mind is something that we can attain to now, even without living in the exact same sort of civilization as Atlantis may or may not have been before the end of the Younger Dryas period. We don't have to have atlatls and be hunting mammoths or be living in cave structures or small thatched huts or anything like that to be able to look at the stars. But we have telescopes now because we've blacked out the sky with city lights and pollution. So it's harder to see the stars now in our technological civilization, but we've also supplemented that with, the James Webb telescope and the Hubble telescope and things like that. So.
No, and you said about obviously there could be, we're about due for a good old, cataclysm. So, it very well could be here. I mean, I believe that there's been several cataclysms before the Great Deluge Flood talked about in biblical times. I think was only one of them. I think there's been a few others prior to that even. But I did read somewhere at one point in time the hypothesis that there is another one coming, and it should hit here, I believe, by 2040 is what the idea was, due to some predictions. And it's very interesting. Now, I would like to take a complete freaking sidestep here because this wasn't something I expected to ask, but because we're talking about the end of times, we're talking about space alignments right now and some strange things that are just happening in current civilization on this planet at the moment. What do you make of the Three-Eye Atlas spaceship / comet that we're being told about? Do you think there's something to it? Do you think it's a puppet show and we're just being misled because they can use that as a way to do a lot of things? If we believe that there's some alien vessel coming and we believe that it could be harmful to human beings, there's a lot that the powers that be here could use that for if we believe it enough.
Indeed. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to determine truth from the Ministry of Science type sources where they're in ivory towers of intellectualism and they decree and make proclamations that we're supposed to not even be able to understand. But so is NASA lying about Atlas, or is Atlas a spaceship, or is it a comet of immense size? It really is a startling phenomenon because it came out of nowhere as so to speak, entered our solar system from outside of it, and it doesn't appear to be part of the Oort cloud. So it seems to have interstellar origins, just like, what was it, Unamami was another comet that came through a few years ago that was rather immense and seemed not to have originated in the Oort cloud. But yeah, Atlas, I hope it's not a UFO, you know, I hope it's not a spaceship that's coming to kill us or coming to abduct us or anything. It seems to be acting more or less like a typical comet so far, only of an extreme amount of size and mass. And its approximate duration, at the point at which it's going to be closest to our planet, is supposed to be October 30th, and it's October 23rd right now. So if it were to change course on October 30th and not divert away from us at that time, if it were to keep coming toward us, or to change course and come more directly toward us, even that would be a hugely bad sign of an alien invasion being about to happen.
Yeah. And it's wild to think about. I mean, it could actually happen. It could be here. And what's wild about it, as you said, its closest point to Earth is to be on October 30th, or otherwise known as Devil's Night. So on Devil's Night, something's here. We just don't know what. Is it a comet? Is it a spaceship? We are not sure. I do have a slew of comments coming in here, so I'll jump back. Guys, sorry to ignore you, but we're just having some fun on talks here. Don't wake up the sheep, because that'd be dangerous. Damn space psychology, absolutely. You can't have Mr. Gee on the show and not talk about space, guys. We have Sarah said, Andrus, do you drive a rig? I don't know where that came from, but we're just going to go with it.
I assume they're just talking to each other. Andrus,
I guess so. I drive many
rigs.
All right. Thought so. I don't know. Maybe they know each other.
He's a chatty fellow. He'll just go on and on.
Oh, no. Hey, I want him to.
So much.
Gee's cosmology is extensive. Trevor says, do you think they are purposely keeping... Oh, no, shit. I didn't even see his comment when I asked you that question. Now I'm seeing it. He said, do you think they are purposely keeping information about Three Eye Atlas from, or are they purposely creating a false... I swear to you, Trevor, I did not see your question. I asked the exact same question, and then there it was. Andra says, it was domesticated wolves. Humans aren't dragging down mammoths. Gotcha. Okay. Some big craters in Australia look devastating. Apophis. Natasha said, how interesting. She's referring to the Devil's Night fact that the aliens are going to be here. We'll be doing heavy ritual that night, so with our cult. So if we look up to the sky and then it just turns on fire, we're just going with it. Okay. And then Max says, I drive rigs. And Andra says it's definitely a rock. And then last comment, Trevor says, you asked it as I was typing it out. Oh, okay. So yeah, save wavelength there. So let's continue on with these questions. Where was I? So we kind of touched on that, but I'll still ask it. Many critics reduce Illuminism to political conspiracy. What would you say they most misunderstand about the Atlantean vision?
Well, the Atlantean and the Illuminist vision may not be identical either. Atlantis as a resurgent culture, as a resurgent model for society, has been the goal of many secret societies. But they compete with one another because they don't even agree on what their goals are in terms of achieving that ideal utopian society. So I would say that we have a certain percentage of groups and cults and secret societies that are almost exclusively politically motivated. And I would say that there are within almost all groups and cults and secret societies a certain percentage of the population of those members that are going to be more politically motivated in their mind state as well. So I don't think Illuminism can afford to relegate or neglect politically minded people. I think for any secret society, for any cult to have an open door kind of policy that allows anyone to join, it would have to allow in people who are of different opinions from one another, both politically and about the importance of politics as a general concept. So Illuminism, I think, is definitely more than just politics, but I don't think politics can be separated from Illuminism.
No, well said. Very well said. We got a couple more comments coming in here, guys. I'm just trying to stay with them. Occam's razor does apply. And he also said, Andrus also says, more likely a false flag, blue beam, covert suggestions for EZV. I'm not fully with you on that, but not with you because I'm not against you. I'm just saying I'm not fully following everything you're saying, but I'm also trying to look at the questions and other comments at the same time. I don't have time to hypothesize. Now I want to jump into ethics a little bit. So in the, let me pull it up here. In relativist ethics, you posit morality as geometry of perception. How can virtue or vice be mapped in mathematical form?
Oh, I like that. If we say that virtue is what's best for life and living organisms, and that it's of benefit and value for us to be able to survive and evolve and progress and advance ourselves as a species and as life forms in general. If we say that that's all good by definition, and what is opposite that would be evil. So death, decay, harm, injury, pain, all of those things can be associated then with evil. Then if we have good and evil and beneficence and harm as opposite ends on a spectrum, we can also look at things at right angles to this spectrum and then begin to associate those things to good and evil. So it's basically like the beginnings of the construction of a moral compass. If you want to go towards what's good, then you think about any particular individual example of a thing and associate it with either more good or more evil. And the result of this geometry is you can apply it to political society as well, and graph laws and tyranny as being at right angles to one another, where the axis of law is one leading from one leading from nature to nurture, and the axis of tyranny is, the axis of freedom would be at a 90-degree angle to law or tyranny. And then the distinction between them would be a 45 or preferably a 45-degree angle or something in between that 90-degree angle. So if you were to take, and again, I misspoke at the beginning and it makes it difficult to follow around, but if you were to take the straight line between good and evil, and then at a right angle to that place law and freedom, then you have the beginning of the moral compass in regards to social politics. You can also label on the same structure God and the devil instead of good and evil, or vice versa, however you would wish. but the archetypes are all basically the same, and they can all be arranged into a quaternion, and the quaternion of cardinal directions can then be arranged into base 6, base 8, etc. It just becomes more difficult to describe from there.
No, but it's beautiful because, as we talked about earlier, it always comes back to geometry. It always comes back to geometry and numbers, everything. Now we have, Andrew says, hold on a second, I missed a couple comments here. Sarah says, Andrus, Baphomet on the inside or outside? And then Andrus says, none, unfortunately. Baphomet, wayside parody demon, I'm just the real thing. Yeah, I have no idea what these guys are talking about. I'm jumping back. All right, so
they're just having a conversation.
They're just having a full-blown conversation.
Yeah.
Now, let me get here. There we go. All right, so let's see here. So, stemming off of that, you argue for subjective ethics of perception. Is there any place for objective good in your framework, or is all morality relative to one's internal symmetry?
There's agreed upon morals and ethics in a group, in a society, and even in a species. The laws of the jungle don't abide by our feelings. So our laws are much stricter in a sense and much more forgiving in a sense than the laws of nature. But the laws of nature are more unbreakable or harder to break than human-made laws.
Agreed.
So I think, like, if a person develops a moral compass on their own inside themselves, they'll be a better person because they'll be led by something that is at least superior to their own exclusively self instincts and self interests and self-willfulness. But it doesn't mean one has to do that. Everything's optional. So yeah, ethics and morality are certainly just options in reality we can abide by or not, and they differ from place to place and time to time.
I think it is strong. I mean, and as you said, it doesn't have to be that way, but I think formulating, I think there's a, we'll go off of the Baphomet that these guys were talking about. I'm going to use that and throw it in here. We're going to do the Solvet Coagula, to break down your understanding and programming that you've been given since birth on what is society, what is humanity, what is law, what should you follow, and just disintegrate all of that and get rid of it. And to then from there build up your own code of ethics and morality and have that moral compass, as you said, I think is a beautiful thing, because then you are free. While maybe you are still in this prison structure, you are free within it because you are living by your rules. Now, obviously, you have to be sensible of that. You can't just go out and break a ton of rules and expect there not to be, consequences. But there is a beautifulness to being able to just break all of that down and say, I'm following the rules not because I'm told to, but because I agree with A, B, and C, but I don't agree with X, Y, and Z. Exactly. And I'm going to live my life around those morals, those ethics.
Yeah.
Now, how does suffering refine the geometry of the soul?
Oh, that sounds like an Andrus question.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it's just because I know him so well. That's the type of question he usually asks me. I don't think that suffering refines the soul in the sense that he's always saying, pressure makes coal into diamonds. But I don't think that people are coal. So, stress and pressure and suffering, I don't think necessarily act upon the soul in the way that a what's the word? Like a pressure cooker or a what's the word? Crucible. Okay. Like a crucible. Yeah, I don't think it dissolves the impurities of the soul in the way that like Nietzscheans or some people believe. I don't think suffering is necessary to burn away the impurities of the soul, that kind of thing.
No, that makes sense to me. I have to agree with it. Now, we comment from there. Sarah said, "It is true. Follow rules to serve yourself. You don't want to end up in prison." Yes, you have to know how to play the game. So even if you don't fully agree with rules, there's ways around that. I mean, remove yourself from society in most cases. I other than work, other than things that I have to put myself in society, I very much don't exist. Yeah, I might have a show, but the show operates by my rules. The cult and coven, operate by our rules as a cult or coven. There's ways of living your life by your doctrines without having to be a part of the rest of the world, except at times that you do, and then you have to almost follow their rules. As I use the analogy all the time, it's being a chess master. You have to know how to play the pieces just right. If you do, a lot of things will fall into place. Andrew says, as Crawley said, "Do as thou wilt." The laws of chimps don't apply to the bonobo. The hell's a bonobo?
It's a different kind of monkey.
Okay. I'm learning things tonight. All right, so let's jump back here. Let's see. All right.
Yeah. I was going to say ethics
please
is
do.
ethics is a difficult subject to broach also because everybody seems to have their own slightly different take on it. So
Yes.
if anybody says, well, my ethics is this, then someone else will come along and say, well, my ethics is different than that. And then they get into an argument. So philosophically speaking, there's a lot more in common than not in common between average people who have to develop a moral compass to be better people and people who don't develop a moral compass. But everybody seems to have their own personal philosophy regardless of how developed it is. So I don't think it's necessarily unique or special to have a personal philosophy. Just perhaps how developed it can be is determined by the amount of time one has to put into it.
That is true. Yeah, you can grow it and water it and watch it flourish, or you can keep it where it's at, and neither's wrong. It's interesting because, as you said, everybody has a philosophy, even if you've never studied philosophy. So people are like, I'm not into philosophy. Sure, you are. You just don't know it.
Right.
Now, does enlightenment, in your view, end karma or perfect it?
Well, it seems as though the end of karma is its perfection. Its goal would be its own perfection. And karma in itself just being good and evil as particulates. And this goes back to the question a moment ago about objective versus subjective good and evil. Traditionally speaking, ethics is considered subjective. Right and wrong is different for everybody at every different time. But morality is considered objective, and good and evil are considered to be timeless truths that are inviolable. I consider both of them temporary. However, I don't think good and evil are concepts that would exist if the human species were to become extinct. I don't think most animals, even if animals continue to evolve, would adopt the same status or the same standards for good and evil that we've had in our time. So, yeah, the question of moral philosophy is, I'm sorry, what was it that you had asked?
And I actually, we're going to skip it because as I read it off, I end up deleting that one. I have them on a list here that I typed out. I don't even, we're getting too deep, folks.
Oh, okay.
I think you answered it though. We answered it, and then somehow along the way, now we're going to take a sidestep here. So give me 1 second. Since I have so many of them, I sometimes, as you're answering them, I remove them, which I know can sound silly, but if I don't, then I'll end up getting mixed up with them later. All right, let's take a completely different step here. Let me make sure there's not a whole bunch of comments here. Okay, there's not. Okay. So, in contributors and NyarlaHotep, ritual death is both literal theater and psychic transformation. Why must illumination be earned through death?
The context it's discussing in NyarlaHotep and the Contributors Club are rituals that I wrote into the Pythagorean Order of Death hierarchy or structure. And in that context, the moral is given that one has to meditate on and prepare for the moment of death in order to overcome the fear of death, which is essentially just phobia that holds people back from achieving their full potential for self-attainment, self-improvement, and the like.
I think I started to lose you there for a second. You still there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
There you are. No, it froze there for a second. Okay, I want to make sure we
Am I
didn't
here?
freeze up. And yeah,
Okay.
you're back again. And I
Okay,
mean,
no
it's just interesting to think of not only in those two, but I mean, if you look at a lot of other structures out there, even Freemasonry and things, there is the death within the ritual to be brought back to life again. And even in our cult, there is the aspect of death and being reborn again. I mean, it is such a pivotal structure, I think, for people to go through, as you said, to face death, to face that fear, to dissolve that fear and be reborn again. Um, do you think it's just a process that one has to go through that to reach those higher levels? Is it necessary, or do you think that there's something kind of hidden within that?
All that. I think it's a uniquely human experience, and I think that if we don't meditate on death, whether that be in a group setting, independently, or even just momentarily once in a while we're driving, I think it would be a waste of our genetic unique potential. Meditating on death is something that a deer can't do. If I'm out driving in the woods and I see a deer, the deer doesn't realize that it may be inches away from losing its life. It doesn't have a concept of what it would mean to not be alive. Uh, it doesn't in the way that we do. Um, Meditating on death and going beyond the fear of the experience of dying is certainly a liberating process for one's independent individual psyche. But I think it's also necessary for the evolution of our own species to embrace those traits like that make us unique and independent and individual.
I love that. No, I truly love that, Jonathan. I don't think I've ever really thought of it in that exact way. That we have this special gift that we can reflect on death when nothing else can. And Natasha and I, within our cult, did a public opportunity last year where anybody that was interested in being a part of this death reflection could join us, and we each day put out a video of what to reflect on that day over a 2-week span, a 14-day death meditation and death reflection. And the results and the correspondence back was amazing, that so many people never really took time in their life to reflect on their death. And as they started to think about death, and we had them look at different aspects, not only death of themselves, but one of the hard things for a lot of people was think of everyone you ever loved being dead. Think of your children, think of your parents, think of your brothers and sisters, your friends, think of everyone you know dying and them no longer being here. And we went through different aspects every day for 14 days. And it changed a lot of people at the end of this 14 days. They're like, wow, I never thought of life. I'm looking at life differently. And it's like, that is the point. And I love that you added that on, because that's an extra, bullet point to that, is we are the only creatures here that can do that.
Certainly seem to be.
unless there's something we don't know. Now,
Indeed.
the union of Imhotep and NyarlaHotep parallels the alchemical marriage of light and shadow. What truths are revealed only through their synthesis?
Curious. Light and shadow, the synthesis being an object, being a material solid to cast the shadow from the light source. And Imhotep and NyarlaHotep being characters in, again, the Pythagorean Order of Death rituals. So Imhotep would represent the light, and NyarlaHotep would represent the darkness, and their juxtaposition would be what's described in those rituals. And there's 4 rituals, but only 3 of them deal with the characters of Imhotep and NyarlaHotep. And I would describe them, but that would be giving away the secret sauce.
Don't give the sauce away.
Right.
Guys, if you want the secret sauce, one of the newest things to be published, and you can correct me, Jonathan, if I'm wrong, right now on Amazon, you can find a number of Jonathan's books that have just recently been published in book form. They were available digitally prior to that. Now they are available in hand physical copies, and one of them is the Pythagorean Order of Death omnibus version, which gives you a breakdown of pretty much everything in one book. So I would implore you to go check that out, because there's a lot of great fruit, and we can't give you, as Jonathan said, we can't give you the sauce. That was actually a question, and that was perfect. I was hoping you wouldn't answer it, so it would give me that exact segue. So you were right on cue. I loved it.
Thanks.
Now, let's go ahead here, and an initiate's aura interact with the environment within karmic physics.
Karmic physics. Yay, we get to talk about particulate good and evil as an objective material. In karmic physics, one has an aura similarly to how the local universe has its aura of hyperspace surrounding the universe. An individual has an aura of electromagnetic polarity surrounding their physical body, comprised of the energy in their nervous system, the electromagnetism in their nervous system while they're alive, their Curlian aura that emanates outward from the entropy of heat leaving their skin. All of these things are evidence for the presence of the soul while the body is alive, because when the body dies, these are all absent. So the soul, if it exists while the body is alive and then leaves the body, it must be comprised of these components that are then absent from the dead body. So the aura, the electricity inside the nervous system, that's basically the soul of the person. And the inside of their aura depicts a reflection of what they have inside them, and the exterior surface of their aura reflects a depiction of the exterior reality around them. So when we see one another, what we're seeing is a combination of how I see myself and how you see yourself, and how I see you and how you see me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes back to the geometric quaternion, but it also creates in terms of there's a membrane between us that is comprised of my aura on one side and your aura on the other, and then we communicate across that membrane or gap. Am I here?
You're here. You started to go, but we didn't lose you. It just started getting a little foggy.
Okay, good. Yeah. Eye on my bars. But yeah, the units of karma, the electromagnetic aura of the person being essentially comprised of units of karma of good or evil that are intangible, mercurial constructs, concepts, because karma as an objective, materially real substance, it has no tangible essence, it has no substance, it has no tangibility. It isn't a real thing. It's imaginary in the same sense as the future or the past. It's a construct and a concept that's apprehendable only by the mind, but not by the body. So karma in the form of good and evil, and to some extent ethical right and wrong, isn't a tangible substance per se, but it can be expressed through the relations of these sorts of things. So, for example, the weights and measures when there's a scale and both scales are balanced, because they have equal weight in each pan, then we consider that fair, and we consider that just and good, things like that. But to say that you can take a pile of good on one side of the scale and a pile of evil on the other side of the scale and weigh them, you can't do that because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, because where does good flip over to evil and evil flip over to good? Where is that defining point? You know, it's there really isn't one. So, like you said, only the mind can try to correlate that and make
Right.
sense of it. Some of these comments here, let me try to get through them. Natasha said earlier, and I'm not sure to which point that was, that sounds familiar. Andrus says, until the EV9L, until the evil, no clue. And something about developing religion. Death seems to be as important to life as the prenatal adventures in the womb. And so many good leaders of thought walking the earth to listen to. John's views are some of the most original I have stumbled across. Very original, very intelligent, very well thought out. The amount of work that you've put in, not just, I mean, guys, if you're not familiar with John until tonight, there's like 100 some, over 100 some books and texts written. There is hundreds of videos out and lectures. There is a ton of original art that is just trippy and out there and awesome. There is a ton of music out there. I mean, this man has, his catalog is impressive as hell to have been able to release all of this. And what's awesome is he shows you a piece of his soul in his work, because whether it's his music, his artwork, or even his writings. There's one of your books, and I can't remember off the top of my head which it is, and it's like your personal journal, and it was your writings, and it's so damn small, and it's every page is written fully throughout the whole book with your little writings and doodles, but your doodles are phenomenal. Your doodles are better than anything I could actually like draw or paint. Um, and I remember just looking through it, and I'm like, these are the scribblings of a mad genius. And they are, and I love that. I think that's a wonderful thing. So I agree with you, Andrus, on that. He did say, and one thing I don't agree with you on, Andrus, is he says, I say life is fleeting and more important than death worship. Plenty of time to not exist. Oh, no, I think that there's, by reflecting on death within life, you can really live. But agree to disagree. We all have different perspectives. He did also say light, form, shadow, reflection, light again. Now, let's jump into some of these other questions here. Let me get rid of these. All right. In Kabbalah 23, you treat the tree of life as a technological interface with consciousness. Do you view the Sephirot as literal energy gates?
Not as literal in the sense as the chakra. The chakra are definitely energy gates, but the Sephirot and the Tree of Life structure, as we had talked about a moment ago, one can
I might be losing
start onto the Tree of Life in different arrangements.
But
just 1 second.
You might be back.
Yeah.
I think you're back now.
Yeah. How about now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Hey, it happens.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, for example, this. I have this little model here that shows my concept of the tree of life diagram. Of course, it doesn't resemble necessarily what it looks like in most 2D depictions, but it has at the top the Sephiroth, Kether, Chakma, Banan, etc. As locations on the same structure, just rearranged slightly. And I consider that structure itself a metaform, a form that is beyond usual forms. Three-dimensional objects like a pear or a peach or an orange or a planet or a star or a galaxy. They all exist in over 4 time, but metaform shapes and over 5D time. So they're experienced alike angel by some and alike devils by others, but certainly they provide an interface for a intelligence than the individual themselves is capable of attaining by themselves. So when we meditate on objects like the tesseract of the tree of life or the torus of the human soul, and then we assign these to one another and begin comparing and contrasting them, we're improving our own, we're improving our own karma, and we're improving and becoming more in line with the sort of metaform structures that I believe are actually behind observations and experiences of angelic and alien abduction even.
No, it's awesome that you said that. Because I mean, do you feel, as you said, that you're trying to see the forms that are behind the forms? You know, you're trying to see what lies behind it. Do you feel that the alienistic beings, whether you want to call them demons, daemons, angels, aliens, whatever have you, when you're working either the Sephirotic tree or the Qliphothic tree, do you feel that they're just different? How do I want to word this? Are they the same beings just under a different understanding that we're experiencing? So for example, if I am working Hod and I'm working in the Qliphothic tree, then it's a Dramalek, it's the sphere of Samael. If I'm coming across the intelligence that I'm experiencing as a Dramalek, is that going to be the same as the angelic counterpart part of Hod in the Sephirotic tree? Do you feel that they're just different perspectives of the same being, or no?
That's a question because it goes into Buddhism as well. In Buddhism, the body sought for the Buddhists,
I'm losing you again, I think.
the hungry ghosts.
There you are. I think you're back. I lost you. You started to say in Buddhism there's the concept of the bodhisattva, and then I lost you.
Okay. There's the concept of the bodhisattvas, and the Buddhists as peaceful deities, and the concept of the, and then I forget the Sanskrit name, but the demons, the wrathful hungry ghosts, as being malicious and wrathful deities. And in Buddhism, the description is essentially that they're the same being, just perceived differently. Mm-hmm. So in the near-death experience hallucination, really when like drugs, or doing ritual magic also is another, the same effect in the mind. When doing these things, we're leaving the mundane realm and entering a realm of transmundane, supernatural, paranormal phenomenon, and we want to do so temporarily. We don't necessarily want to get stuck there. So if we recognize that it's our perception that controls how we see the hallucinations that we have in these cases, whether they be angelic, demonic, peaceful deities, wrathful deities, aliens, demons, angels or gods, etc. Once we realize that it's our perception that determines how they look and react to us, that's the most empowering experience that one can bring back from meditating on the higher realms of spirit and the existence of the mind after the body's death. The relativity of good and evil is just like surface level, or the tip of the iceberg, as it were. How powerful the perception, the realization is that the way we react and interpret other people and other beings, whether they're real or imaginary, or whether they're material or hallucinated or what have you, that act of how we react determines how they'll react.
Yep.
So I would say that Adramelech and whichever of the 7 archangels corresponds to Hod. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I would think
I was
of
trying
them
to think
certainly
too.
as
I
just
used to
like the
know him,
two
and I'm like,
sides
which
of one
one?
coin. Yeah, I've never been the best with the archangel assignments to the Sephiroth. I remember the Sephiroth pretty well.
Yeah, the angels, I always had a hard time, because then you, like, I've always been drawn more to the Catholic side, and I have that down pretty good. But as far as like, then which choir of angels is in which sphere of the Sephiroth, I'm like, I know it, but it always slips, and I have to refresh myself to remember, so I can't remember which archangel is in Hada either.
Right. Practice helps, which is something that I lack.
You know, and it's interesting what we just talked about, because as I've said, and Natasha and I in our other show, Caniculum Obscuritatis, we've talked about that people need to understand, if you take 5 ritual practitioners, let's say we all are working the Clophotic tree, we're all working, let's say, Golachov, and we're working with Asmodeus. The study and understanding, the fear, the anticipation, everything that each individual of the 5 has will create for a very unique and individualized experience of Asmodeus as an energy once you come into contact with it. That's why we see spirits differently than one another. How can someone say, when I contacted this daemon or demon, it came as a beautiful angel, and someone else is like, it came as a terrifying fucking monster? Like, what are you talking about? It's because everybody's understanding is playing in it. You are the makeup and dress room for the spirit to come into. Your imagination, your Pandora's box opens up, and everything that you have in there goes into the costume that spirit, that energy dresses as we talked about earlier. It goes much higher than any physical, visual, audible form. But when it comes down further and further, you're pulling this spirit down into your plane of consciousness while also raising your plane of consciousness. You're meeting at that midway point, and it's using your understanding. How can this human understand me? Here's how. And for some, that might be a terrifying beast. For others, it might be a beautiful angelic being. But I think it certainly uses our faculties and our understandings and research to dress itself for us to be able to anticipate it. I have seen on the Clophotic tree beautiful things. I have had calm, life-changing lessons. And then I've had absolutely terrifying, brutal moments during it that were life-shaking that kind of left me jolted for quite some time afterwards. But it is worth the adventure to go through, because not only are you dealing with the shadow aspects of yourself, not only are you dealing with traumas and baggage that you don't even know that you have, but you are also dealing with some very real intelligences. Now, the argument always comes, is it inside of me? Is it outside of me? It is both. Because inside of you is the entire universe. Outside of you is the entire universe. It is a conundrum. It's the divine paradox. But, folks, you have to dig in to experience it. That's why the slogan of the show is "Step into the Circle," because you have to try to dig deep. And as you mentioned, John, there's a couple ways of doing that. Ritual magic is one, obviously. Entheogens is another, and that's why I, in my practice, will mix entheogens. Not all the time. It has to be sacred. But entheogens from time to time in specific workings that can catapult you to other realms of consciousness that you just can't normally reach. And I know for most folks, I would not suggest the use of entheogens in working the Qliphoth. It can be catastrophic, but it also can be beautiful at the same time.
Indeed, the use of entheogens is increasingly beneficial in the eyes of society. It has been since the 60s, when Western scientific materialist medicine rediscovered entheogens, rediscovered their existence and their benefit medicinally, and medically. But combined with ritual magic, the ability to open one's third eye to look beyond the mundane into the transmundane, etc. It's a very powerful experience, and I highly recommend it to anybody who is strong enough to actually bring something of benefit back from it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you'll just get lost. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck happened to me? But yeah, you have to be able to grasp on your way back through the doorway here. You got to grab a hold of a couple things and pull it back with you, because if you don't, you're going to look back on it a day or two later and be like, what the hell happened to me? And you gain nothing but maybe a terrifying or really heady experience. No, if you can learn to temper yourself and contain even a fraction of what you experience, because you're not going to bring back a whole lot, that fraction can be huge. And it can create books and all kinds of wonderful things. You can start to just know things that you wouldn't normally know. And once again, It's not that you learned them. It's just simply that you remembered, folks. You already knew it. You just had to learn that you knew it. I'll read a couple of these comments here. Indra says, true polymath. Have learnt a ton from John. I hope you all do too. I think we certainly are this evening. Psychosomatic enneagrams, he says, and Jung called transcendent function. The mythopoetic realm would need its own podcast. Yeah, I mean, you could go on some of these subjects, Anders, forever. I mean, there really is no end. As we said, the universe is inside of us, and it's endless. You can just keep falling, brother. Got to try to find your way back, though, because I know a lot of people have fell too far. They didn't come back. All right, so what do we got here? Let me look at... Okay. So which myths, Atlantean, Egyptian, or biblical, resonate most deeply with your inner symbolic structure, John?
I would go with the Kabbalah itself as a metaphysical structure. I think it's an important lattice to use as a frame ideas upon, and our own. I'm breaking up again.
Yeah, I lost you a little bit there.
So
I heard you say you would go with the Kabbalah itself as a... Yeah, I heard you say that the Kabbalah of itself as a metaphysical structure, and then we lost you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the Kabbalah itself is a metaphysical structure, as a lattice to place ideas on and then relate those ideas to one another. That's something that supersymmetry and string theorists have begun to look at with the Dinkra symbols as ways to relate mathematical and astrophysical type ideas to one another. Instead of physical objects being counted into like cavemen counting stones or something, it's taking quantum mechanical and astrophysical ideas and placing them relative to one another in ways that are similar to the Kabbalah. And that's considered theoretical science in today. But it's essentially the same traditional, historic, ancient Kabbalah in terms of just being able to relate ideas and correspond ideas to one another.
I think
that amazing. Would definitely be what's most important for me.
Well, I think because it's an amazing structure, as you said, you can really use it as a meta structure to place anything on. I mean, and you can organize so much off of it. There are other meta structures out there that can be used, absolutely. But I feel in an agreement with you, John, that I don't know of one that I would put above the tree of life diagram to be able to fit so much into. And that actually brings me to a question that I did not have written down as one of my questions tonight, but I thought of it earlier and I wanted to ask you. Is obviously a revolutionary change from traditional Kabbalah to more Hermetic Kabbalah and other forms of Kabbalah that have come out since was Eliphas Levi's placing of the tarot on the tree of life. And I know there's some people that think that it fits very well and that there's a lot of resonance there. There's other people that argue against it and say that that was a complete mistake. It should have never happened. But I know that you have written and spoken about this before. Do you feel that that is a structure that it does fit well, the tarot onto the tree of life? Because there's so much more than just the cards themselves, obviously. The understandings of the depth of the card, of the major arcana, and how it fits the tunnel, how it fits the spirits that are supposed to dwell within those conceptual tunnels. What is your thought on
that? The original assignation to the paths on the tree of life were to the Hebrew letters of the alphabet. And the Hebrew letters of the alphabet were then assigned different zodiacal and alchemical correspondences. So 7 of the letters were assigned to the planets, 12 to the astrological zodiac signs, and 3 to the phases of matter. So technically, those are the most fundamental of the path of life. But tarot is meant to assemble traits and experiences one can have analyzing any particular path symbolically and in terms of imagery, and then just to compile all of those into a single picture. And so far as I know, the tarot trumps prior to Levi had not been depicted per se as they were after Levi. So some of the images that he used, for example, Baphomet was mentioned earlier, but Baphomet is the goat-headed Gaudimendes symbol for the devil in the tree of, in the tarot, the trumps of the tarot, following Levi. I think that his depiction was taken as gospel by subsequent tarot scholars and authors. But I think that before Levi, there's less evidence that, for example, there's a painting by Michel Nostradamus in work of paintings that's attributed to him that was about the last popes, the final popes to come at the end of Christianity, the end of Catholic Christianity. And one of those is a picture of a tower that's on fire that resembles the lightning-struck tower card later. But in the context of Nostradamus's painting, it's not the same context as in the tarot trumps of Levi. So, I mean, there's limited evidence for the existence of the symbols themselves prior to Levi assigning them to the tarot trumps, but the assignations that he chose in particular, and as well, I might add, the assignations of the tarot to the Hebrew letters and what number trumps which Hebrew letter, and then also which Hebrew letter goes with which of the 7, 12, and 3 attributes. Those get all up, and the result is the tarot itself being a deck of cards. The randomization feature is almost the most important aspect of it at that point, because it becomes almost impossible to create a sequence of cards that is most accurate. So, like, even if you were to assign these cards to these paths on the Tree of Life, and do a tarot spread or something like that, it would be more realistic or more feasible than just laying the cards out one after another in a sequence or in a straight line, because the 7 and the 12 don't always correspond. The 12 are a circle, and then the 7 are planets that occur in different places along and around and within that circle. So trying to assign the tarot trumps to the Hebrew letters and the Hebrew letters to the zodiacal attributes, it's just a great mess. It's not impossible to determine a true and accurate assessment, but so much of it, especially with the tarot trumps, has become very subjective and very perceptive and very perceptual, very perception based.
I think there's fruit that could be had there, but as you said, I mean, after Levi or Levi, that it changed a lot with that. I mean, to have the concepts of the 3 mother letters of Leth, Mem, and Shin, to have the 7 doubles, the 12 singles, to have the 22 Hebrew letters matching with 22 major arcana, trumps, it makes sense in itself. But then, which version of the tarot are you working with? Because there's been many made, and now if you flip to a modern world, my God, there's 5,000, 10,000 different decks of tarot, and a lot of them are not similar to one another. They have completely different meanings in the cards. So then, if you're going to base it off of one deck, that's one thing, but you can't uniformly say that his version is going to fit every deck that you might be using if you're trying to go off of a specific deck's meaning, because there's very big differences. You see that not only from Levi to Crawley. Crawley tried to do the same. He changed them around, and it was a very different arrangement of correspondences there than Levi had. So something fun to play with, though.
Yeah, he tried to add more. Yeah, certainly.
Which his deck's interesting. Why am I going to blank right now? The Thoth deck. It is an interesting deck. There's, I play with it from time to time, as far as doing readings for myself, and seeing how I feel about it. He had a lot of great correspondences. Crawley's work was fantastic. I think he had a lot of amazing things. There's definitely some errors within it, but who doesn't have errors? And then there's just some insanity.
Perfect.
But insanity and errors and genius usually all go together. So, I mean, that's how you break boundaries, and he was certainly doing that. Now, let's go into the last couple questions, and we'll finish up. We flew through that hour and a half. We're actually an hour and 40 minutes in, so we'll ask a couple questions, guys. Stick around for 2 more, and then we'll close out. And where did I put it? I just had it in front of me. How can listeners, John, apply even a fragment of your system into their daily practice?
Wow. Reading. You got to read. You got to read everything. You got to read voraciously. Everything that interests you, you've got to read as much about it as you possibly can until you find it doesn't interest you anymore. And with my work, there's a copious amount of it. So if you dig into one topic, you'll probably come to the end of it before you lose interest, but you'll find a different topic and be able to dive into it next. So, reading.
Yeah, no, and I would agree, because I say that all the time on all my shows, including this one, that I'm a voracious reader. I read constantly. I don't know if I read at the level you do, and I don't even know how anybody could read more than me, because I nonstop read. But I'm like, man, this guy does some reading. You must be a speed reader, because damn, as he said, folks. I mean, you can jump into John's catalog, start digging in. You finish something, it leads you to somewhere else. You read that, it leads you to somewhere else. And by like the third thing, you're like, what the fuck is happening right now? You're like, I'm losing my mind. There's so much that I just took in that I can't contain, but maybe 20% of it.
Yeah.
Which is great though. That is how you learn, because you're expanding that mind, and you're not going to retain it all. You're going to retain some, which leads you into other paths and other doorways. And then somehow you find yourself back at the beginning again. You're like, wait a second. Now I understand it more than I did the first time. It's circles. It certainly circles. Now let's take a look here.
Indeed.
Last two questions. I lied. I said I was going to do two, but I was going to do three. So we got two more. If the Atlantean Order were to rise again, John, what do you think the first law would be?
The first law. I love that. There's only one law, and that is that there is no law. There is no law. There's the law of one is the law of zero. Anarchy is the only true necessary state for nature. Once man's laws die off with our species, only natural laws will remain. And after the universe dies off, these natural laws will die off with it. Perhaps another universe will come along after that with different natural laws. But the only real law is that all laws are temporary, all laws change, all laws are fleeting, and all laws are therefore irrelevant, essentially. They're just opinions.
Yep. I can agree with that fully. And then my final question for you, brother. Finally, how would you define truth after a lifetime spent dissecting illusion?
Oh, that's got a great thick ironic layer to it too. Well, I've spent a lot of time reading ancient myths, and only to come to the conclusion that most of the myths were fiction. So I feel as though I've set myself back in terms of learning about physical reality. So I'm trying to play catch up with that now a little bit. I don't regret reading the myths, because it taught me all that I know about ancient systems of metaphysics, ancient beliefs about cosmology and the afterlife, and etc., so that I can study modern science and modern theoretical physics and modern theology, and understand the premises and where they fit together and where they came from. But yeah, I would say the truth is that there's more to reality than can be expressed through myth. And as eye-opening and inspiring even as myth can be, reality is even stranger. And there's a lot more to it, and a lot more of it.
Yes, there is. I love that. That is a great way to end that segment of the show. Why don't you tell folks, John, where they can check you out at, what you want them checking out? Give a shout out for what you got going on.
Well, I got this book that's up on Amazon now, The Tree of Death and the Qliphoth. And it's a pretty nice book from Manus Sinestra. I would recommend getting and reading that at one's leisure. But I have a stack of other titles that I've just recently put up onto Amazon. Let's see which ones are current. Yeah. And they're going to look essentially like these. These are a little larger, and they have a plastic, clear plastic cover that you won't get from the Amazon editions. The Amazon editions are going to be paperbacks that are a little bit smaller than this and have full color pages and diagrams and everything, just like the PDFs. So, yeah, there's going to be 10 of those on Amazon now, and hopefully I can get another 10 coming soon. But they're up as paperbacks right now, and they should be up as hardcovers coming soon as well. And the prices range from about $20, which is about as cheap as I could make them, to around $35 or $40 for the thicker ones.
Which is still
But
priced
yeah,
great.
I would hope anybody who was interested would check those out. I tried to give it all away for free, but nobody was interested. I spent about 25 years just on the internet trying to give PDFs of magic and metaphysics away for free to people, and nobody seemed to really notice or care. So it's nice to know that some people did, because obviously you've read the works and seen the videos, and you've been inspired. And it's great to know that.
I have, and there's
It's
still a
great to
lot
have
more to
met
go,
you.
brother. I'm only, you know, as much as I've read and watched and dove into, I feel like I'm only literally just got a toe in the water right now. So I still have a lot more to jump into, but I'm very, very excited to jump into it and continue to learn and research. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
So, folks, we're going to go ahead and get ready to close out for the evening. So I will, give the closing final statements. In the geometry of spirit, there are no straight lines, only spirals returning to the source. Tonight, we traced one of those spirals through myth, mathematics, and the mind. May the listeners remember that the great work is not only ascension, but alignment, and that enlightenment without ethics is a light that burns without warmth. Until next time, keep your lamp trimmed, your sigils sealed, and your mind open to the impossible. I want to thank Jonathan Barlow Gee for coming on the show this evening, sharing his knowledge. And as always, I'm your host, Frater Crow. We'll catch you next time on Knights of the Nephilim.